Detective Maya Rodriguez didn't know that the man watching her from the doorway was the Alpha King of the Eastern Pack. She didn't know that he'd been tracking her career for months, waiting for this exact moment. And she certainly didn't know that throwing her badge on that desk would be the last time she'd ever try to walk away from him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Maya stared at the mountain of files spread across her desk. 12 missing women. 12 cold cases that had consumed her life for the past 8 months. 12 faces that haunted her dreams and followed her through every waking moment. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Her fingers were stained with ink from the endless reports, her eyes burning from squinting at crime scene photos until the images blurred together. She'd been at the precinct since 6 that morning. It was now past midnight. Again. The bullpen had emptied hours ago, leaving her alone with the ghosts of unsolved cases and the steady hum of old computers. This was her life now. Had been for years, really. Maya Rodriguez, the detective who never went home. Maya Rodriguez who cared too much. Maya Rodriguez who couldn't let go. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd dedicated her life to finding missing women when she'd spent most of her own life feeling invisible. Her phone buzzed against the desk, jolting her from her thoughts. A text from her sister Elena. "Still at work? You missed dinner again? Mom made your favourite?" Maya's chest tightened. She'd missed dinner. Again. Just like she'd missed Elena's graduation celebration last month. Just like she'd missed Christmas morning because she'd been chasing a lead that went nowhere. The job had become everything, consuming her life piece by piece until there was nothing left but case files and cold coffee. But it was worth it, wasn't it? If she could just solve one case, save one woman, make one family whole again. Rodriguez. Maya looked up to find Detective Jim Thornton standing beside her desk, his jacket slung over his shoulder and a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Her partner of 3 years. The man who'd taken credit for her work more times than she could count. The man who somehow always managed to be in the captain's office when promotions were discussed, while she was buried in case files. Working late again? His tone held that familiar note of condescension that made her jaw clench. You know, maybe if you learned to work smarter instead of harder, you wouldn't need to live here. Maya bit back her first response, and her second. Just reviewing the trafficking angle on the Riverside cases, I think there's a connection between the Riverside cases. Jim's smirk widened. Funny you should mention those. I just came from Captain Morrison's office. Something cold settled in Maya's stomach. Oh? Turns out that breakthrough you thought you had about the shipping routes and the warehouse connections? Well, let's just say the captain was very impressed with my detective work. Jim straightened his tie, the gesture so perfectly smug that Maya's hands curled into fists. He's putting me in charge of the joint task force with the FBI. Seems like this case is too big for junior detectives to handle alone. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her work, her theories, her sleepless nights and her breakthrough about the shipping manifests that had finally started to connect the dots. All of it handed over to Jim with her name nowhere in sight. That was my case. The words came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. Was it? Jim tilted his head, mock confusion written across his features. Because I distinctly remember discussing those shipping routes with you in the break room. Thanks for the brainstorming session, by the way. Sometimes bouncing ideas off the junior staff really helps clarify things. Junior staff. She'd been a detective for 5 years. She had more closed cases than half the senior detectives in the building. But somehow she was still junior staff, still invisible, still the woman who did the work while men like Jim took the credit. You know what the best part is? Jim leaned against her desk, his voice dropping to a whisper. The FBI thinks I'm some kind of genius. They're talking about fast-tracking me for a federal position. Turns out your little shipping theory was exactly what they needed to crack this thing wide open. Maya stared at him. At his satisfied smile and his perfectly pressed shirt and his complete and utter lack of shame. She thought about the nights she'd stayed up until dawn, mapping routes and cross-referencing databases. She thought about the phone calls to port authorities and shipping companies, the hours spent building a case that Jim had just stolen with a single conversation. She thought about the 12 women whose faces were burned into her memory. Women who deserved justice. Women who deserved someone fighting for them. But not like this. Not when her own department treated her like she was invisible. "You're right," Maya said quietly, standing up from her chair. Her legs felt unsteady, but her voice was clear. "I am working too hard." Something flickered across Jim's face. Uncertainty, maybe. "Maya, look." No. The word came out sharper than she intended. Maya reached for her badge, the weight of it familiar in her palm after all these years. The gold shield that had meant everything to her when she'd first earned it. The symbol of justice and protection and making a difference in the world. Funny how light it felt now. "I'm done." Maya slammed the badge down on her desk, the metallic clang echoing through the empty bullpen. "I'm done with this precinct. I'm done with this job. And I'm done with men like you taking credit for my work while I kill myself trying to save people who will never know my name." Jim's mouth fell open. "Maya, you can't just... Watch me." She grabbed her jacket from the back of her chair, her hands shaking with adrenaline and anger and something that felt dangerously close to relief. "Enjoy your FBI task force, Jim. I hope it brings you everything you deserve." She turned toward the exit, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. She was really doing it. Walking away from 5 years of her life, from cases that needed solving, from a job that had defined her for so long she wasn't sure who she was without it. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to find out. "You're not leaving." The voice stopped her cold, deep, commanding, with an accent she couldn't place. Maya turned to find a man standing in the doorway of the bullpen, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. He was tall, easily 6'4", with dark hair and the kind of face that belonged on movie screens or magazine covers. But it was his eyes that caught her, amber like whiskey in sunlight, and focused on her with an intensity that made her skin flush. She'd never seen him before. She was certain of that. She would have remembered. "I'm sorry." Maya's voice came out breathier than she intended. The stranger stepped into the bullpen, and she noticed the way he moved. Predatory grace, like he owned every space he entered. He wore an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, and there was something about his presence that made the air feel charged. "You're not leaving," he repeated, his gaze never wavering from hers. "Not yet." Jim cleared his throat loudly. "Excuse me, but this is a police station. You can't just walk in here and—" The man's attention shifted to Jim for exactly 2 seconds, just long enough for Jim to take an unconscious step backward and fall silent. Then those amber eyes were back on Maya, and the rest of the world seemed to fade into background noise. "Detective Rodriguez." Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "I've been waiting to meet you." Something stirred in her chest. A flutter, like butterfly wings or electricity. She told herself it was just adrenaline from the confrontation with Jim, but deep down she knew better. "Do I know you?" she managed. He smiled then, and the expression transformed his entire face. "Not yet, but you will." He took a step closer, and Maya caught his scent. Something wild and woodsy, like pine forests and winter storms. "My name is Konstantin Volkov. I'm here about your cases." The name meant nothing to her, but something in his tone made her pause. "My cases?" "The missing women, the trafficking ring you've been tracking." His voice dropped lower, more intimate, as if they were the only 2 people in the room. "I have information you need." Maya's heart stuttered. What kind of information? The kind that will help you save them. Konstantin's eyes held hers, and she felt something shift in the air between them, something electric and impossible and utterly overwhelming. The kind that will change everything. Before she could respond, he reached out and gently touched her hand. just a brush of his fingers against hers, but the contact sent a jolt of golden lightning up her arm and straight to her chest. Maya gasped, yanking her hand back, but the sensation lingered, warmth spreading through her body like honey in her veins. "What?" She stared at him, her skin still tingling from that brief contact. "What was that?" Constantine's smile deepened, and there was something almost predatory in the expression. Something that should have frightened her, but didn't. That, Detective Rodriguez, was the beginning. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She looked at her badge, still gleaming on the desk where she'd thrown it, then back at this stranger who made the air crackle with electricity and spoke in riddles about saving lives. She should walk away. She should pick up her jacket and leave this place and never look back. She should run from whatever this was, whatever he was, because every instinct she'd developed over 5 years of police work was screaming that this man was dangerous. But dangerous in what way, she couldn't say. "I was just leaving," she said weakly. "No." Constantine stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You weren't?" And God help her, as she stood there staring into those impossible amber eyes, Maya realized he was right. Maya stared at Konstantin Volkov, her heart still racing from whatever had happened when he touched her hand. The precinct felt different now, charged with an energy that made her skin prickle and her breath come short. Jim had disappeared sometime during their exchange, probably scurrying off to tell Captain Morrison about the strange federal consultant, but Maya barely noticed. All her attention was focused on the man standing impossibly close to her in the empty bullpen. "Information about my cases," she repeated slowly, trying to ground herself in something concrete, something that made sense. "What kind of information?" Constantine's amber eyes never left her face. "The kind that explains why 12 women have vanished without a trace, why their disappearances follow a pattern your department can't see, why you're the only detective who's come close to understanding what's really happening." Maya's pulse quickened. For months she'd felt like she was chasing shadows, following leads that evaporated the moment she got close. But there had been patterns, routes that didn't make sense, timing that felt orchestrated, details that nagged at her because they didn't fit any normal trafficking operation. "You're FBI?" she asked, though something told her the answer would be more complicated than that. "No." Constantine moved closer, and Maya caught that wild, woodsy scent again. It made something deep in her chest pull tight, like a thread being tugged. "I represent different interests, specialized interests." "Meaning?" "Meaning the women who've been taken aren't random victims, Detective Rodriguez. They're specific targets, selected for very particular reasons." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "And the people taking them aren't entirely human?" Maya blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The trafficking ring you've been tracking is run by rogues, werewolves without pack affiliation, who hunt supernatural females to sell them to the highest bidder." Constantine said it like he was discussing the weather, casual, matter of fact. "Your 12 missing women, 11 of them were shifters, the 12th was human, but she had the sight, the ability to see through supernatural glamour." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Maya stared at him, waiting for the punchline or the hidden camera or whatever this was supposed to be. Because surely he wasn't standing in a police station at 1 a.m, telling her that werewolves were real and they were kidnapping women. "Werewolves," she said flatly, "among other things." "You're insane." Constantine smiled, and there was something almost fond in the expression. "I know how it sounds, but deep down you already know I'm telling the truth. You've felt it, haven't you? The wrongness in these cases, the way the pieces don't quite fit, the sense that you're missing something fundamental." Maya's mouth went dry. Because he was right. She had felt it. Every crime scene had felt off in a way she couldn't explain. Every witness interview had gaps that didn't make sense. It was like trying to solve a puzzle when half the pieces belonged to a different picture entirely. "That's just—" she shook her head. "That's just good detective work. following hunches, reading between the lines. Is it? Constantine took another step closer, and Maya found herself backing up until her hip hit the edge of her desk. Or is it something more? Something you've never understood about yourself? What are you talking about? You solve cases other detectives can't touch. You see connections others miss. You walk into a room and know immediately if something's wrong, even when there's no evidence to support the feeling. His amber eyes seemed to glow in the fluorescent lighting. That's not just good detective work, Maya. That's the sight. Dormant, but there. Maya's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. You're crazy! This is crazy! I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but no game. Constantine reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, thick with photographs and documents. Proof? Despite every logical thought in her head screaming at her to walk away, Maya found herself reaching for the folder. Her fingers brushed his as she took it, and that same golden lightning shot up her arm. She gasped, nearly dropping the papers. "What is that?" she whispered. "What happens when you touch me?" Something dark and hungry flickered across Constantine's face. "Recognition," he said simply. Maya forced herself to look away from him and opened the folder. The first photograph made her blood freeze. It was a crime scene photo, but not from any case she'd worked. The image showed what looked like claw marks across a wooden floor, deep gouges that were far too large and too precise to have been made by any human weapon. The second photo showed bite marks on a victim's arm. Canine, but wrong somehow. Too big, too deep. The third showed footprints in mud. Human feet, but the stride length was impossible. 12 feet between steps. "These are from similar cases across the country," Constantine explained quietly. "Supernatural trafficking rings that local law enforcement can't solve because they're missing the context, missing the knowledge of what they're really dealing with." Maya flipped through more photos, more impossible evidence. Security footage of a man moving faster than human eyes should be able to track. DNA results that showed markers no laboratory could identify. Witness statements describing things that sounded like hallucinations but were reported by multiple credible sources. "This is—" She looked up at him. "This is real, isn't it? As real as the women who are still out there waiting to be saved." Constantine's voice was gentle now, patient. "As real as your ability to help save them." Maya set the folder down on her desk with shaking hands. Everything she thought she knew about the world, about her cases, about herself, was crumbling around her. But underneath the shock and disbelief, something else was stirring. A sense of pieces finally clicking into place, of answers to questions she'd never known how to ask. "So what are you?" she whispered. "If werewolves are real, if all of this is real, then what are you?" Constantine was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "I'm the Alpha King of the Eastern Pack," he said finally, "the leader of every werewolf territory from Maine to Virginia." Maya's knees nearly buckled. "Alpha King. Yes. And you're here because these rogues are hunting in my territory, because they're taking women under my protection." His eyes darkened, and for a moment Maya caught a glimpse of something wild and dangerous beneath his human mask. "And because you're my mate." The words hit her like a physical blow. Maya grabbed the edge of her desk to steady herself, her world tilting sideways. "You're what?" "My mate, my other half, the woman I've been searching for my entire life." Constantine's voice was rough with emotion now, all pretense of casual conversation gone. "The moment I saw your case files, the moment I read your reports and saw how you think, how you see the world, I knew. And when I walked into this room tonight and caught your scent—" "This is insane," Maya breathed. "This is completely insane. I don't even know you. I don't believe in any of this supernatural." "Your heart is racing," Constantine observed quietly. "Your pupils are dilated. Every time I step closer, your breathing changes. Every time I touch you, electricity shoots through your entire body." He moved closer, and Maya's back pressed against her desk. You can tell yourself this is crazy, Maya. You can tell yourself you don't believe in fairy tales, but your body knows the truth. Maya stared up at him, trapped between his body and her desk, and realized he was absolutely right. Her pulse was thundering, her skin felt hypersensitive, and every instinct she possessed was screaming at her to either run as far as she could or step closer and see what would happen if she kissed him. The intensity of that second impulse terrified her. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do this. I don't know how to do this." "You don't have to do anything," Constantine said softly. "Not until you're ready. But please don't run. Please don't walk away when there are women out there who need both of us to save them." Maya closed her eyes, trying to think through the chaos in her head. Werewolves, mates, alpha kings. It was like something out of a fantasy novel, not her real life. But the evidence was right there in the folder. The cases she'd been working suddenly made sense in a way they never had before. And this man, this impossible, overwhelming man, was offering her answers. Partnership. A chance to actually save the women whose faces haunted her dreams. "If I help you," she said slowly, "if I believe this crazy story and work with you, what happens to me?" Constantine's expression softened. "Whatever you want to happen. I know this is overwhelming. I know it's a lot to process, but you don't have to decide anything about us right now. All I'm asking is that you help me stop these rogues. Help me bring those women home." Maya opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked. Past the impossible beauty and the predatory grace, past the expensive suit and the commanding presence. What she saw there was pain. Responsibility that weighed on him like a physical burden. And beneath it all, something that looked dangerously like hope. "You said 11 of the women were shifters?" she asked. 11 were wolves from packs under my protection. Young females who were targeted specifically because of their bloodlines, their abilities." His jaw clenched. "They're being sold as breeders, or worse." The raw fury in his voice made something fierce and protective rise in Maya's chest. She thought about the files on her desk, the faces of women who'd vanished without a trace, the families who would never know what happened to their daughters, their sisters, their mothers. She thought about Jim taking credit for her work while those women suffered. She thought about walking away from the only cases that had ever really mattered to her. And she thought about the impossible electric feeling that raced through her every time this man touched her. "I still don't believe in fairy tales," she said finally. Constantine's mouth curved in the barest hint of a smile. "Good. We're not living in one. This is real life, with real consequences and real danger. But it's also the chance to make a real difference." Maya reached for her badge where it still lay gleaming on her desk. The weight of it felt different now. Not like a burden, but like a promise. "Oh, okay," she said quietly. "I'll help you. I'll work with you to find these women." She clipped the badge back to her belt, her hand steadier now. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "I want to see proof, real proof, not just photographs and files. I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Maya met his amber gaze directly. "And I want honesty, complete honesty. No more mysterious hints or half-truths. If we're going to be partners, I need to know everything." Something that might have been respect flickered across Constantine's features. "Done. And one more thing." Maya straightened her shoulders, finding her footing again. "I may not understand this mate thing, and I may not know how to handle whatever this is between us, but I'm still a cop. I'm still a detective. I don't need a protector or a keeper. I need a partner." Constantine's smile was slow and devastating. "Detective Rodriguez," he said, "I wouldn't have it any other way." The golden thread in her chest pulled tight, and for the first time since he'd walked into the bullpen, Maya didn't try to fight it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of impossible discoveries and electric tension that made Maya's skin hum every time Constantine entered a room. 3 days became 5, became 7, and with each passing hour, Maya found herself deeper in a world she'd never imagined existed. The Supernatural Crimes Unit Constantine had proposed was officially a federal task force, complete with FBI credentials that made Jim's face turn an interesting shade of purple when Captain Morrison announced the assignment. Maya Rodriguez, the junior detective who'd been ready to quit a week ago, was now the NYPD's liaison to a classified federal investigation. The irony wasn't lost on her, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of working alongside Konstantin Volkov. Maya had thought she understood dedication. She'd spent years pulling 18-hour days, living on coffee and determination. But watching Konstantin coordinate a multi-state investigation while managing pack politics through encrypted phone calls in 3 different languages made her realise she'd been playing in the minor leagues. "The Portland pack confirmed 2 more missing females," Konstantin said, ending a call as Maya walked into the temporary office they'd been assigned in the federal building. "Both taken within the last month, same MO as our cases." Maya set down 2 cups of coffee and spread a new set of files across the conference table they'd claimed as their war room. The walls were covered with maps, photographs, and flowcharts that told the story of an operation far more sophisticated than anything she'd encountered in regular police work. "That brings the total to 18 confirmed kidnappings across 6 states, she said, settling into the chair across from him. "All young females, all taken from areas with low supernatural population density. Someone's being very careful to avoid pack territories. Until now." Konstantin's amber eyes darkened as he studied the map. "Taking women from my territory was either incredibly stupid or incredibly deliberate." Maya had learned to read the subtle signs of his anger over the past week, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the stillness that came over him like a predator calculating the perfect moment to strike. It should have frightened her. Instead, it made something protective and fierce rise in her chest. "Probably deliberate," she agreed, pulling out the latest shipping manifest she'd obtained through official channels that Konstantin's unofficial contacts had somehow made completely accessible to her. "Look at this pattern." She spread the documents between them, her fingers tracing routes across a map of the eastern seaboard. "Every location where women were taken has a corresponding shipping route that leads back to 3 main ports, Baltimore, Norfolk, and Jacksonville, but the timing coincides with new moon cycles," Konstantin finished, leaning closer to study her work, "when our natural abilities are at their weakest." Maya's breath caught as his shoulder brushed against hers. Even through the fabric of their clothes, the contact sent that familiar golden warmth racing through her bloodstream. After a week of working together, she still hadn't gotten used to the way her body reacted to him, the way every casual touch felt like lightning, the way her heart rate spiked every time he said her name. "Maya?" She realized she'd been staring at the curve of his mouth instead of the shipping manifests. Heat flooded her cheeks as she forced herself to focus on the paperwork. "Sorry, late night." It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd been staying up until 3 in the morning, going over case files and trying not to think about the way Konstantin's eyes seemed to follow her every movement. "What I was saying is, whoever's running this operation knows supernatural physiology. They know when you're most vulnerable." Konstantin went very still. "When we're most vulnerable," he corrected softly. "Your abilities might be dormant, Maya, but they're still there, still part of you." Before she could respond to that particular reminder that her entire understanding of herself had been turned upside down, Konstantin's phone buzzed with an incoming text. Maya watched his expression change as he read the message, going from focus to something that looked dangerously like lethal fury. "What is it?" "Someone broke into your apartment last night." Maya's blood went cold. "What?" Konstantin was already standing, reaching for his jacket. "My contacts in the building across the street from yours saw movement around midnight. 2 men, professional-grade equipment. They were inside for approximately 20 minutes. Did they—" Maya's hands were shaking as she gathered the files. "Did they take anything?" We'll find out. But Maya, you can't go back there, not until we know what they were looking for and whether they found it. Maya stared at him. That's my home. That's a crime scene now, and more importantly, it's compromised. Constantine's voice had taken on that commanding tone that made something in her chest flutter and rebel in equal measure. You'll stay with me until we resolve this. I'll stay where? The words came out sharper than she intended, but the presumption in his tone set her teeth on edge. A week of working together, of watching him navigate supernatural politics with the kind of authority that made senators defer to him, and she was still trying to figure out how to maintain her independence in his orbit. My penthouse, it's secure, and my pack provides round-the-clock protection. Your pack? Maya set down the files she'd been clutching. Constantine, I still don't entirely understand what that means. I know you're some kind of supernatural leader, and I know there are people who answer to you, but I've never actually met any of them. Something flickered across Constantine's face. You're not ready for that yet. Says who? Says me. The words came out rougher than he probably intended, and Maya saw him make a visible effort to soften his tone. Maya, my pack is intense. They've been waiting decades for me to find my mate. When they meet you, everything changes, for all of us. Maya felt that familiar pull in her chest, the golden thread that seemed to tighten every time he used that word. Mate. She still didn't know what to do with it, how to process the idea that some supernatural force had supposedly bound her to this man she'd known for exactly 1 week, a week in which she'd solved more cases and felt more alive than she had in years. A week in which every conversation felt like verbal sparring and every accidental touch left her skin burning. A week in which she'd caught herself staring at his hands and wondering what it would feel like if he touched her with intention instead of accident. I can handle intense, she said finally. Constantine's smile was soft and devastating. I know you can, but I want to protect that fierce independence of yours for as long as possible. Once the pack accepts you as their Luna, everything becomes about us instead of you, and you're still figuring out who you are in this world. Luna. Another word that made her pulse flutter, another piece of a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to complete. Fine, she conceded. I'll stay at your place, temporarily, until we figure out who's targeting me and why. Thank you. The genuine relief in his voice caught her off guard. For all his commanding presence and supernatural authority, there was something almost vulnerable in the way he looked at her, like he was still afraid she might bolt, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Maya understood the feeling. The drive to Constantine's penthouse took them through the kind of Manhattan real estate that existed in a different economic universe from her Brooklyn apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, doormen who looked like they could bench-press small cars, and an elevator that required a keycard just to access the top floor. Modest, Maya murmured as the elevator doors opened directly into a living space that could have housed her entire precinct. Functional, Constantine replied, but she caught the hint of amusement in his voice. The pack requires certain accommodations when they visit. The penthouse was beautiful in a way that felt both luxurious and surprisingly comfortable. Warm woods and soft leathers, with books scattered on every surface, and the kind of art that looked like it had been collected over years rather than purchased by a decorator. But it was the view that made Maya's breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Central Park, the city spreading out below them like a glittering web. It's gorgeous, she admitted. I'm glad you like it. Constantine set her overnight bag down by the couch. The guest room is down the hall, but I should warn you, the walls are soundproofed, but the windows aren't. If there's any trouble, any sense that something's wrong, I need you to call for me immediately. Maya turned to look at him. What kind of trouble? The kind that comes looking for police detectives who get too close to supernatural trafficking rings. His expression was serious now, all traces of warmth gone. Maya, whoever broke into your apartment tonight wasn't looking for your television. They were looking for evidence, for your case files, for any indication of how much you know. but all my files are here or at the precinct." "They don't know that." Constantine moved closer, and Maya found herself backed against the window, the cool glass a sharp contrast to the heat radiating from his body. "And even if they did, you're still the detective who's been tracking them for months. You're still the woman who's gotten closer to shutting them down than anyone else." Maya stared up at him, acutely aware of how close he was standing. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes, close enough that his wild, woodsy scent was making her head spin. "You're trying to scare me," she said softly. "I'm trying to keep you alive." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with a gentleness that made her knees weak. "These aren't ordinary criminals, Maya. They're rogues with nothing to lose and everything to gain. They'll kill you without hesitation if they think you're a threat." "Then we'll have to make sure I'm more than a threat," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We'll have to make sure I'm the one who brings them down." Something blazed in Constantine's eyes. Pride, maybe, or desire, or something more dangerous than either. "God, you're magnificent," he murmured, and before Maya could respond, before she could think or breathe, or remember all the reasons this was complicated, his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything she'd imagined, and nothing she could have prepared for. Soft at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But when she didn't, when she instead fisted her hands in his shirt and kissed him back, something wild and hungry took over. Maya had been kissed before. She'd dated, had relationships, thought she understood physical attraction. But this was different. This was fire in her veins and lightning in her chest, and the overwhelming sense that she'd been holding her breath her entire life until this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Constantine rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I walked into that bullpen," he admitted roughly. "Just since then." Maya's voice was breathier than she intended, her pulse still racing from the kiss and the way he was looking at her. "No," Constantine said softly. "I've wanted to do that since before I knew you existed, since I was old enough to understand what it meant to have a mate." The words should have terrified her, should have sent her running for the door and back to her normal, uncomplicated life. Instead, they made that golden thread in her chest pull so tight it was almost painful. "Constantine," she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say. "I know." His thumb traced her lower lip, swollen from his kiss. "I know it's too much, too fast. I know you're not ready for everything this means. But Maya, I need you to know that whatever happens next, whatever we have to face, I'll wait. However long you need to figure this out, I'll wait." Maya stared up at him, at this impossible man who commanded werewolf packs and solved federal cases and kissed her like she was everything he'd ever wanted. The smart thing would be to step away, to establish boundaries, to remember that she'd known him for exactly 1 week and her life was already completely upside down. Instead, she rose up on her toes and kissed him again. This time, when they broke apart, she was the one who smiled. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "We have women to save and rogues to catch. Everything else, we'll figure out everything else." Constantine's answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the city below them. "Together," he agreed. And as Maya looked out at the glittering lights of Manhattan, she realized that for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever came next, whatever impossible challenges they faced, she wouldn't be facing them alone. The golden thread in her chest hummed with contentment, and finally Maya stopped fighting it. Maya's world shattered at exactly 3:47 a.m. when her phone rang with the call she'd been dreading her entire life. "Maya?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper, choked with terror. "Maya, something's wrong. There are men outside my apartment and they're—" The line went dead. Maya was out of bed and reaching for her gun before the silence fully registered. Her hand shook as she tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. Elena's bright, laughing voice asking callers to leave a message, completely at odds with the fear Maya had just heard. "Constantine!" Maya's voice cracked as she called out, but he was already there, materializing in her doorway like he'd been waiting for this moment. I heard. His face was carved from stone, amber eyes blazing with a fury that made the air around him seem to vibrate. "My contacts are already en route to her building, but Maya, they have her." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. "They have Eleanor because of me, because I got too close." Constantine was across the room in 3 strides, his hands framing her face with desperate gentleness. "This is not your fault. Isn't it?" Maya pulled away from him, pacing to the window that looked out over the city where her sister was somewhere in the darkness, terrified and alone. I knew they were escalating. I knew getting closer to them meant putting people I care about at risk, and I did it anyway. Because women were dying. Constantine's voice was rough with emotion. Because you couldn't stand by and let them suffer when you had the power to help. Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. With shaking fingers, she opened it to find a photo of Elena bound to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, eyes wide with terror above a strip of duct tape covering her mouth. The message below the photo was simple: "Come alone, or she dies." The phone slipped from Maya's nerveless fingers, but Constantine caught it before it could hit the floor. His expression went murderous as he read the message. "Like hell," he snarled. "Constantine, they have my sister." Maya's voice broke on the words. "They have Elena, and they want me to come alone, and I don't care what it costs. I'll do anything to get her back." "Anything?" Constantine set her phone on the nightstand and turned to face her fully. "Even trust me? Even let me help you save her?" Maya stared at him. At this man who commanded packs and solved impossible cases and kissed her like she was precious beyond measure. A man who'd spent the past 2 weeks showing her a world she'd never imagined and asking nothing in return except that she not run away. They said come alone. They say a lot of things, most of them lies. Constantine moved closer, and Maya caught that familiar scent of pine forests and winter storms. "Maya, I know you're terrified. I know every instinct you have is screaming at you to go charging in there and trade yourself for Elena, but that's not going to save her." "Then what will?" "Working together, trusting me to have your back while you have mine." His hands settled on her shoulders, steady and warm. "Letting my pack help us bring both of you home safe." Maya's breath caught. "Your pack. 20 of the most highly trained supernatural soldiers in the Eastern Territories, fighters who've been waiting their entire lives to protect their future Luna." Constantine's smile was sharp and predatory. "Did you really think I was going to let you face this alone?" Something fierce and grateful expanded in Maya's chest. For weeks, she'd been struggling with the idea of belonging to something bigger than herself, of being part of a pack, a family, a supernatural hierarchy she didn't understand. But standing here in the pre-dawn darkness, knowing her sister was in danger and that she didn't have to face it alone, Maya finally understood what it meant. "Tell me the plan," she said. Constantine's answering smile was devastating. "First, we find out exactly where they're holding Elena. Then we remind these rogues why it's a very bad idea to threaten what's mine." The next hour passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Maya watched in fascination as Constantine transformed from the patient, careful man she'd come to know into something far more dangerous. Phone calls were made in rapid-fire conversations that switched between English, Russian, and what sounded like some kind of pack dialect. Maps were spread across his dining room table. Weapons appeared from hidden compartments she hadn't even known existed. And then the pack arrived. Maya had thought she was prepared for meeting Constantine's people. She'd imagined something like a military unit or a specialized task force. She had not been prepared for 20 of the most lethal-looking individuals she'd ever seen to file into the penthouse like they owned it. They moved with the same predatory grace as Constantine, but where he was controlled and civilized, his pack radiated barely restrained wildness. Men and women who looked like they could tear apart a building with their bare hands and smile while doing it. "Maya," Constantine said, his hand settling at the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive, "meet my pack." A woman with silver-streaked hair and scars across her knuckles stepped forward. "Detective Rodriguez, I'm Sarah, Constantine's second. We've been looking forward to meeting you." "Under better circumstances, I hope," Maya managed, trying not to be intimidated by the way they were all studying her, like they were evaluating whether she was worthy of their alpha. Elena Rodriguez, age 26, graduate student in social work at Columbia, a younger man said, consulting a tablet. Taken from her apartment at 0347 hours by at least 3 individuals. Building security was disabled, suggesting professional-grade equipment and inside knowledge. "Inside knowledge of what?" Maya asked. "The building's supernatural wards," Sarah replied grimly. Elena's apartment was protected. Someone told them exactly how to get through the barriers. Maya felt cold dread settling in her stomach. Supernatural wards? "Standard protection for family members of pack leadership," Constantine explained. "I had them installed the day after you agreed to work with me. Someone very specifically targeted Elena because they knew it would get to you." "Which means they've been watching us," Maya realized. "They know about the partnership. They know about—" She gestured between herself and Constantine, not quite ready to put a name to whatever they were becoming. "They know you're my mate," Constantine said simply, "and they're using that knowledge as a weapon." The word mate still made something flutter in Maya's chest, but for the first time it didn't terrify her. Instead, it made her feel powerful, protected, like she was part of something bigger and stronger than anything she'd ever imagined. "Where is she?" Maya asked. "Warehouse district in Queens," the young man with the tablet replied. "Same area where the other women were processed before being moved. They're not being subtle about this." "Because they don't intend for any of us to survive it," Sarah said grimly. "This is a trap, Alpha. They're counting on you coming for her." "Of course it's a trap." Constantine's smile was all teeth. "But they made one critical error. Which is? They think I'm coming alone." Constantine looked around at his pack, and Maya saw something pass between them. Some kind of silent communication that spoke of years of partnership and absolute trust. "What they don't realize is that when you threaten my mate, you threaten the entire pack, and we take that very personally." Maya stared at him, at the deadly certainty in his voice and the way his pack straightened at his words. These people were ready to go to war for her sister, for her, because of some supernatural bond she still didn't entirely understand, but was finally ready to accept. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Be exactly who you are," Constantine replied. "A brilliant detective with instincts that have kept you alive this long. We'll handle the supernatural elements. You focus on reading the tactical situation and finding Elena. And if something goes wrong—" Constantine stepped closer, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "Then you remember that you're not just Maya Rodriguez anymore. You're Maya Rodriguez, mate to the Alpha King of the Eastern Pack. You're Luna to 20 warriors who would die before letting harm come to you, and you're strong enough to handle whatever they throw at you." Maya rose up on her toes and kissed him, hard and desperate and full of everything she couldn't say. When they broke apart, her voice was steady. "Let's go get my sister." The warehouse was exactly as ominous as Maya had expected. Abandoned industrial buildings stretched in every direction, creating perfect cover for the kind of operation the rogues were running. But as they approached the target building, Maya's enhanced senses picked up something that made her blood run cold. "There are more of them than we anticipated," she whispered into her comm unit. "How many more?" Constantine's voice was steady in her earpiece. Maya closed her eyes, letting her dormant abilities reach out the way he'd been teaching her. "At least 15, maybe 20, and Constantine, some of them aren't human. Copy that, adjusting strategy accordingly." Maya crept closer to the building, using the skills she'd learned in years of police work, combined with the supernatural awareness that was becoming stronger every day. Through a dirty window, she could see Elena tied to a chair in the centre of a large open space, alive, conscious, and terrified but unharmed. But it was the man standing behind her that made Maya's breath catch. Viktor Volkov. She recognized him from the intelligence reports Konstantin had shown her, leader of the largest rogue trafficking operation on the East Coast, and based on his resemblance to Konstantin, quite possibly related to him. "Maya, report!" Konstantin's voice was tense in her ear. "Target confirmed. Elena is alive and appears unharmed. But Konstantin, there's something else. The leader, I think he might be family." The silence on the comm was deafening. Then, rough with pain, "Viktor, my brother!" Maya's heart clenched. She'd known this case was personal for Konstantin, but she hadn't realized how personal. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Mission remains the same. We get Elena out safe and we stop this operation permanently." "Copy that." Maya moved to her next position, watching as pack members took their places around the building. "Beginning approach in 30 seconds. "Maya!" Konstantin's voice stopped her. "When this is over, when Elena is safe, there are things I need to tell you. About my family, about why Viktor became a rogue." "Tell me after," Maya replied firmly. "Right now, all that matters is getting my sister back." "Understood. All teams green light." What happened next would be seared into Maya's memory forever. The coordinated precision of the pack moving as one unit, the way they flowed through the building like deadly shadows. The moment when Viktor Volkov realized he'd been outmaneuvered by his own brother. But it was the moment when Maya's dormant abilities fully awakened that changed everything. She'd been making her way toward Elena when one of the rogues appeared behind her, silver knife raised to strike. Maya spun around, and something inside her exploded outward. The rogue flew backward 15 feet, crashing into a concrete pillar with enough force to leave cracks in the stone. The warehouse fell silent. "Maya!" Konstantin's voice was filled with awe and pride. "Are you all right?" Maya stared at her hands, power still crackling along her skin like visible electricity. "I think so, but Konstantin, what just happened to me?" "You came into your abilities." Viktor's voice cut across the warehouse, filled with bitter amusement. "My brother's little human mate isn't so human after all." Maya turned to face him, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't afraid. Power thrummed through her veins, and she could feel the pack's strength backing her up. "Let my sister go," she said calmly. Viktor smiled, pressing the edge of a silver blade to Elena's throat. "I don't think so. You see, this was never really about the trafficking operation. This was about proving to my dear brother that his precious mate could be broken, that everyone he cares about can be taken away." "Viktor!" Konstantin emerged from the shadows, and Maya's breath caught at the sight of him. Gone was every trace of civilization. This was the Alpha King in all his terrifying glory, amber eyes blazing with supernatural fire. "Let her go. This is between you and me." "Is it?" Viktor's blade pressed closer to Elena's skin, drawing a thin line of blood. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like it's between me and the woman who's going to watch her sister die, because she chose the wrong side." Maya felt something snap inside her chest. Not break. Transform. The golden thread that connected her to Konstantin blazed white hot, and suddenly she could feel everything. The pack's loyalty, Konstantin's love, her own power rising like a tide. "You're wrong," she said, her voice carrying through the warehouse with supernatural resonance. "This isn't about choosing sides, this is about family." She raised her hand, and Viktor's knife flew from his grip, clattering across the concrete. Elena's bonds dissolved like they were made of smoke. "Elena, run!" Her sister didn't need to be told twice. She bolted toward the exit, where Sarah waited to escort her to safety. Victor lunged after her, but Constantine was there, the two brothers colliding with inhuman force. Maya watched them fight, brother against brother, and understood that this had been inevitable from the moment Constantine chose to protect his pack over enabling Victor's ambitions. This was what happened when family bonds corrupted into something toxic and possessive. The fight ended when Constantine pinned Victor to the floor, supernatural strength holding him immobile. "It's over," Constantine said quietly. "The trafficking ends now." Victor's laugh was bitter and broken. "You think this changes anything? There will always be rogues, Constantine. There will always be someone willing to do what you're too noble to consider." "You're right," Constantine agreed, "but they won't have you leading them anymore." Maya watched as justice was served in the ancient way of pack law, swift, final, and absolute. When it was over, when the warehouse was secured and the remaining rogues were in custody, Maya found herself standing in Constantine's arms while Eleanor clung to both of them. "Is it really over?" Eleanor whispered. "This part is," Maya replied, holding her sister close while Constantine's arms encircled them both. "But Elena, there are things you need to know about me, about Constantine, about what we've become." Elena pulled back to look at them both, taking in Constantine's still glowing amber eyes and the way power seemed to shimmer around Maya like heat waves. "You're not entirely human anymore, are you?" she said softly. Maya smiled. "No, I don't think I ever really was." "And him?" Elena looked at Constantine. "What are you?" "I'm the man who loves your sister," Constantine replied simply. "Everything else is just details." Elena studied them for a long moment, then smiled. "Well, I guess that makes you family." Maya felt tears prick her eyes as she realized Eleanor was right. This was family. Not the family she'd been born into, but the family she'd chosen. The family that had chosen her back. "Yes," she said, looking at Constantine with all the love and trust and fierce certainty she'd been afraid to voice. "I guess it does." Constantine's answering smile was radiant as sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Welcome home, Luna," he whispered against her hair. And for the first time in her life, Maya Rodriguez knew exactly where she belonged. The weeks that followed were a strange rhythm of learning to live between two worlds, and Maya discovered that being Luna meant far more than she'd ever imagined. 2 months after the warehouse confrontation, she stood in the conference room of the newly established Supernatural Crimes Unit, watching Detective Jim Thornton's face turn an interesting shade of purple as she briefed a room full of federal agents on the successful dismantling of 3 trafficking rings across 6 states. The irony wasn't lost on her that the man who'd stolen credit for her work was now forced to sit quietly while she presented findings that had made her the most requested supernatural consultant on the East Coast. The key to identifying supernatural trafficking operations, Maya explained, clicking through a presentation she'd developed over countless late nights, is understanding that they follow patterns traditional law enforcement isn't trained to recognize. Lunar cycles, seasonal migrations, and territorial boundaries all factor into their operational timing. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh from the FBI nodded approvingly. "Detective Rodriguez, your insights have been invaluable in establishing protocols for other units. The Department of Homeland Security has specifically requested your consultation on developing national guidelines." Maya felt a warm pulse of satisfaction. Not just at the recognition, but at the knowledge that her work was protecting people across the country. Women who might have vanished without a trace were now finding their way home because she'd learned to bridge the gap between human law enforcement and supernatural reality. "I'm happy to help," Maya replied, "but I should mention that my effectiveness comes from working with specialized contacts in the supernatural community. This kind of collaboration requires trust that's been built over time." She caught Constantine's eye through the conference room window. He was waiting in the hallway, having learned to navigate the delicate balance between his protective instincts and her need for professional independence. The compromise they'd reached involved him attending her briefings, but staying out of sight unless she specifically needed his expertise. It was one of many compromises they'd negotiated as they learned to fit their relationship around their responsibilities. After the meeting, Maya found Constantine exactly where she'd expected, leaning against the wall outside the conference room with that patient expression he wore when he was being deliberately unobtrusive. "How'd it go?" he asked, falling into step beside her as they headed toward the elevator. "3 more states want to implement the protocols. The FBI is talking about creating a permanent task force." Maya smiled. Jim looked like he was swallowing glass the entire time. Constantine's chuckle was warm and satisfied. "Good. He deserves worse for what he put you through." They'd had this conversation before. Constantine's pack instincts made him want to deal with perceived threats in very permanent ways, while Maya insisted on handling workplace politics through proper channels. It was another area where they'd learned to compromise, though she suspected Sarah and a few other pack members had made some unofficial visits to ensure Jim understood the consequences of future misconduct. The elevator doors closed, leaving them alone for the first time all day. Immediately, the careful professional distance Maya maintained in public melted away. Constantine's hand found the small of her back, and she leaned into his solid warmth with a sigh of contentment. "Long day," he murmured against her hair. "Worth it, though. We prevented God knows how many kidnappings with those new protocols." Maya tilted her head to look at him. "Speaking of which, how did the pack meeting go this morning?" "Better than expected. The Chicago pack has agreed to share intelligence, and the Boston pack is finally ready to coordinate operations." Constantine's expression grew thoughtful. "They're all asking about you." "About me?" "About when we're planning the official mating ceremony, about whether you're ready to take on formal lunar duties beyond just consulting work." His amber eyes searched her face carefully. "I told them that was entirely up to you." Maya felt that familiar flutter in her chest. Over the past 2 months, she'd grown into her enhanced abilities and her role within the pack's extended family. Sarah had become both mentor and friend, teaching her everything from supernatural politics to combat techniques she hoped she'd never need. The younger pack members treated her with a mixture of respect and genuine affection that still surprised her. And Constantine had been endlessly patient, letting her set the pace for everything from public acknowledgement of their bond to the increasingly intimate moments they shared in private. But the idea of a formal ceremony, of officially becoming lunar, in the eyes of the greater supernatural community, still felt overwhelming. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of public attention," Maya said honestly. "Then we wait," Constantine replied without hesitation. "There's no timeline on this, Maya, no pressure from me or the pack or anyone else. You become lunar officially when you feel ready, not a moment before." The elevator opened onto the parking garage, but Maya didn't move. Instead, she turned to face Constantine fully, studying the man who'd changed her entire world and asked for nothing but patience in return. "What if I'm never ready?" she asked quietly. Constantine's smile was soft and devastating. "Then you're never ready, and we figure out a different way forward. But Maya, you've already been acting as Luna for weeks now. You coordinate pack security for supernatural crimes cases. You mediate disputes between different territories. You've earned the respect of fighters who've known me for decades." His hands framed her face with infinite gentleness. "The ceremony would just make official what everyone already knows, that you're my mate, my equal, and the heart of this pack." Maya felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming realization of how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been an overlooked detective throwing her badge on a desk in despair. Now she was consulting for federal agencies, protected by a family of supernatural warriors, and loved by a man who'd spent his whole life waiting for her. "I love you," she said, the words spilling out with sudden, fierce certainty. "God, Constantine, I love you so much it scares me sometimes." His answering smile was radiant. "I love you too, more than I thought possible, more than I have words for. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't the careful, questioning kisses they'd shared before. This was claiming and promise and forever, all wrapped into one perfect moment that made Maya's enhanced senses sing with recognition. Mine, something deep in her chest whispered. Pack, home, family. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya made a decision that felt as natural as breathing. "I want the ceremony," she said. "Not because anyone expects it, but because I want it. I want to stand up in front of your pack, our pack, and choose this officially. Choose you, choose them, choose the life we're building together." Constantine's eyes blazed with joy and something deeper, something that looked like the same fierce certainty that was flooding through Maya's chest. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Maya rose up on her toes to kiss him again, softer this time but no less certain. "I'm sure about all of it, the pack, the lunar responsibilities, the ceremony, you, I'm sure about you." "Maya." Her name was a prayer on his lips. "When?" "Soon, but first there's something I need to do." They drove to Elena's apartment in comfortable silence, Maya's hand resting on Constantine's thigh while he navigated Manhattan traffic with supernatural reflexes that made the journey surprisingly smooth. Her sister had recovered remarkably well from her kidnapping, throwing herself into her graduate work with renewed determination, while also developing an unexpected friendship with several pack members who'd taken on informal protective duties. Elena opened the door before Maya could knock, which had become disturbingly normal since her sister had started displaying enhanced intuitive abilities following her exposure to supernatural trauma. "Let me guess," Elena said, ushering them into her living room. "You've finally decided to make it official." Maya stared at her sister. "How did you?" "Maya, you've been glowing for the past hour, literally glowing. It's very subtle, but when you're happy, you do this thing where you seem to shimmer around the edges." Elena grinned. "Also, Constantine texted me 20 minutes ago asking if I was free this evening because he had something important to discuss." Maya turned to look at Constantine, who had the grace to appear slightly sheepish. "I wanted to ask for her blessing," he said, "properly, the way it should be done." Elena's expression softened. "Constantine, you've been part of this family since the night you refused to let Maya quit her job and walk away from cases that mattered to her. You don't need my blessing, but you have it anyway. You both do." Maya felt tears threaten again. "Elena, besides," her sister continued with characteristic practicality, "someone needs to keep you from working yourself to death, and apparently supernatural alpha wolves are very good at that." Elena looked at Constantine with mock seriousness. "You are planning to keep her from pulling 18-hour days, right?" "I'm working on it," Constantine replied diplomatically. "Good, because if you don't, I'll sick Sarah on you, and we both know she's scarier than you are." Maya burst out laughing, the sound bright and joyful in Elena's cosy apartment. This was what family felt like, not the careful distance she'd maintained for years, not the professional isolation that had defined her career, but this easy warmth where the people who mattered most could tease each other and offer support in the same breath. "There's something else," Maya said when her laughter subsided. "The mating ceremony is public. There will be pack members from multiple territories, some media attention, and a level of visibility that might affect you too." Elena considered this seriously. "Affect me how?" "You'll be family to the Alpha King of the Eastern Pack," Constantine explained. "That comes with certain protections, but also certain expectations, and unfortunately, some risks." "More risks than being kidnapped by supernatural traffickers?" "Different risks. Political ones mostly. There are packs that disagree with my policies, supernatural courts that would love leverage against my decisions." Constantine's expression grew concerned. "Elena, I want you to understand what you'd be signing up for." Elena looked between Maya and Constantine, her expression thoughtful. Then she smiled with a determination Maya recognized from their childhood. I'm signing up to be part of a family that includes people willing to risk their lives to save me from monsters, she said firmly. I'm signing up to have a brother-in-law who loves my sister enough to wait however long it takes for her to be ready for forever. And I'm signing up to be part of something bigger than myself, something that protects people who can't protect themselves. Elena reached out to take both their hands. The risks are worth it. Maya felt the last piece of uncertainty in her chest settle into place. This was right. All of it. The ceremony, the public commitment, the joining of not just her life with Constantine's, but her family with his pack. Then it's settled, she said. Let's plan a mating ceremony. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the penthouse she now thought of as home, looking out over Central Park, while Sarah and 2 other pack members helped her prepare for the most important night of her life. The ceremony would take place in the private ballroom of one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels, with pack members and supernatural dignitaries from across the Eastern Territories in attendance. Maya had been amazed by the logistics involved, security details, diplomatic protocols, and traditions that dated back centuries, all coordinated to celebrate the Alpha King claiming his mate. But right now, in the quiet hour before they left for the venue, Maya wasn't thinking about politics or publicity. She was thinking about the man who'd changed her entire world and the life they were about to officially begin together. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, adjusting the flowing silver dress Maya had chosen. It was elegant without being ostentatious, sophisticated enough for the formal occasion, while still allowing her to move freely if the situation required it. Because even at her own mating ceremony, Maya Rodriguez was still a cop at heart. "I look nervous," Maya corrected, but she was smiling. "That's normal. I was terrified at my own mating ceremony," Sarah admitted, "but the moment I saw Marcus waiting for me, everything else faded away. It'll be the same for you." Maya touched the silver pendant at her throat, a gift from Constantine that had belonged to his mother. The pack's Luna for 40 years before her death, she'd been legendary for her strength and wisdom. Maya hoped she could live up to that legacy. A soft knock at the bedroom door interrupted her thoughts. Elena peeked in, radiant in deep blue silk that complemented her dark hair. "Ready?" Elena asked. Maya looked at herself in the mirror one more time. The woman looking back at her was confident, powerful, and surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally. 6 months ago, she would never have recognized this version of herself. "I'm ready," Maya said, and meant it completely. The ceremony was everything Maya had imagined, and nothing she could have prepared for. The ballroom glowed with hundreds of candles and soft golden light that made everything seem magical. Pack members from dozens of territories filled the space, their respect and affection for Constantine evident in every interaction. But when Maya walked down the aisle on Elena's arm and saw Constantine waiting for her at the altar, everything else truly did fade away. He looked devastating in a perfectly tailored black suit, but it was the expression on his face that made Maya's heart race. Love and awe and fierce possession all mixed together in a look that told her she was the most precious thing in his universe. The ceremony itself was a blend of ancient pack traditions and modern vows that they'd written together. Maya promised to stand beside Constantine as his equal, to protect the pack as her own family, and to use her abilities in service of justice and protection for all supernatural beings under their care. When Constantine promised to love her with the patience she'd needed to find her way to him, to support her career and her independence, even when his protective instincts urged otherwise, Maya felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. And when they kissed to seal their bond, when golden light flared between them bright enough that several guests gasped in recognition, Maya felt the final piece of her new life click into place. She was Luna now, officially, publicly, completely. As they turned to face their pack, their family, as a mated pair, Maya caught sight of Elena in the front row. Her sister was crying happy tears and beaming with pride, and Maya realized that this moment wasn't just about choosing Constantine. It was about choosing to belong. to be part of something bigger than herself, to accept love and protection and responsibility in equal measure. "I love you, Luna," Constantine whispered against her ear as they walked back down the aisle together. "I love you too, Alpha," Maya whispered back, and knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The golden thread in her chest hummed with perfect contentment, and Maya Rodriguez, Luna of the Eastern Pack, supernatural crimes consultant and beloved mate, had never been happier to be exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez-Volkov stood in the briefing room of the Federal Supernatural Crimes Division, watching her team coordinate the takedown of the 4th major trafficking ring this year. The brass nameplate on her desk read, "Director, Special Operations," and every time she saw it, Maya felt a quiet thrill of satisfaction at how far she'd come. "Chicago team reports target building secured," Agent Martinez announced from his position at the communications console. 17 victims recovered, all alive and receiving medical attention. "Excellent." Maya marked the location on the tactical map spread across the conference table. "Denver team, what's your status?" "Package delivered," came Sarah's voice through the comm system. Maya's former PAC mentor had transitioned seamlessly into the role of Field Operations Coordinator, bringing supernatural tactical expertise that had revolutionized how they approached these cases. 3 rogues in custody, warehouse cleared, we found evidence of connections to the Seattle operation. Maya smiled. The Seattle operation had been their biggest success to date. A multi-state trafficking network that had been moving supernatural women for nearly a decade. Taking it down had required coordination between federal agencies, local law enforcement, and 5 different PAC territories. It had also established Maya as the foremost expert in supernatural criminal operations. "Outstanding work, everyone." Maya addressed the room full of agents, analysts, and coordinators who'd become her extended professional family. "This is what success looks like when we work together across all jurisdictions." Detective Jim Thornton, who'd been reassigned to the unit 6 months ago in what Maya suspected was his captain's idea of poetic justice, cleared his throat from his position near the back of the room. "Director Rodriguez-Volkov," he said formally, "the press conference is scheduled for 1500 hours. The Attorney General's office wants to emphasize the collaborative nature of the investigation." Maya nodded. "Thank you, Detective Thornton. Make sure they highlight the contributions of our PAC liaisons as well. This success belongs to everyone who participated." The formal politeness between her and Jim had taken some getting used to, but Maya found it infinitely preferable to his previous condescension. Amazing how quickly workplace dynamics shifted when you became the person other people needed to impress. As the briefing concluded and team members dispersed to handle follow-up operations, Maya found herself alone in the conference room with the tactical maps and evidence boards that told the story of their latest victory. 17 more women would go home to their families tonight. 17 more lives saved because she'd learned to bridge the gap between human law enforcement and supernatural justice. "Admiring your handiwork?" Constantine's voice made her turn, a smile automatically spreading across her face at the sight of him leaning against the doorframe. "Our handiwork," Maya corrected, moving into his arms with the easy familiarity of a woman who'd found her perfect match. This wouldn't have been possible without PAC intelligence networks. "And it wouldn't have been possible without a brilliant detective who taught a bunch of territorial werewolves how to work with federal agencies." Constantine's arms encircled her waist, and Maya felt that familiar sense of rightness settle over her. "I'm proud of you, Luna." The title still sent a thrill through her, even after months of hearing it. Not because of the status it represented, but because of the family and purpose it connected her to. "How did the council meeting go?" Maya asked. "Better than expected. The Western Territories want to implement your task force model. The Southern Alliance is finally ready to share intelligence databases. And..." Constantine's smile turned mysterious. The International Supernatural Court has officially recognized our mating bond and requested your consultation on developing global trafficking protocols. Maya's eyes widened. Global protocols? Apparently, what we've accomplished here has attracted international attention. There are similar operations in Europe, Asia and Australia that could benefit from your expertise. Constantine's expression grew serious. But that would mean extensive travel, high-profile cases, and even more public visibility. I wanted to discuss it with you before giving them any kind of answer. Maya considered this. A year ago, the idea of international recognition would have seemed impossible. She'd been an overlooked detective in a city precinct, invisible to everyone who mattered. Now she was being asked to help shape global supernatural law enforcement. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think you're brilliant enough to revolutionize supernatural justice on any scale they can imagine." Constantine's amber eyes were warm with pride and love. "But I also think the decision should be entirely yours. Whatever you choose, the pack and I will support you completely." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Emergency pack meeting at the penthouse. Bring Constantine. This is good news, not crisis news, I promise." Maya showed Constantine the message, and they exchanged a look of amused concern. Eleanor had been spending increasing amounts of time with pack members, her enhanced intuitive abilities making her invaluable for intelligence gathering and threat assessment. But she still occasionally forgot that emergency had specific meanings in their world. 20 minutes later, they walked into the penthouse to find the main living area filled with pack members, all wearing expressions of barely contained excitement. Elena stood near the windows with Marcus, Sarah's mate, both of them grinning like they had a secret. "Please tell me nobody's in mortal danger," Maya said by way of greeting. "Quite the opposite," Sarah replied from her position near the kitchen. "Elena has news." Maya turned to her sister, who was practically bouncing on her toes with excitement. "What kind of news?" "The kind that involves Marcus asking me to be his mate," Elena announced, holding up her left hand to display a gorgeous ring that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. "And me saying yes." The room erupted in celebration. Pack members surged forward to congratulate the happy couple, while Maya stood frozen, processing what she'd just heard. Her sister was engaged to a werewolf, to one of Constantine's most trusted pack members. "Maya!" Elena appeared at her side, concern replacing excitement. "Are you okay? I know this is sudden, but we've been talking about it for months and—" "I'm happy for you," Maya said quickly, pulling Elena into a fierce hug. "God, Elena, I'm so happy for you. Marcus is wonderful. You're wonderful. This is wonderful." And she meant it. Over the past months, she'd watched Elena blossom in ways that had nothing to do with supernatural abilities and everything to do with finding someone who loved her exactly as she was. Marcus treated Elena like she was precious beyond measure, and Elena brought out a playful, gentle side of the normally serious pack enforcer. "There's more," Elena said when they separated. "Marcus and I want to have the ceremony here in New York. We want it to be part of your pack officially, if that's okay with you and Constantine." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "Of course it's okay. Elena, this pack is your family too. It has been since the night they helped save you." "Actually," Constantine said, appearing beside them with Marcus at his side, "there's a tradition for situations like this. When the Luna's family joins the pack through mating bonds, it's considered a sign of exceptional strength and unity. The pack elders have been hoping for exactly this kind of development." Maya looked around the room at the faces of people who'd become so much more than supernatural allies. These were her friends, her chosen family, her partners in building something meaningful and lasting. And now Eleanor would be officially part of it too. "There's something else," Marcus said, his usual serious expression softened by obvious happiness. "Elena's abilities have been developing faster than anyone anticipated. The pack healers think she might have latent shapeshifter genetics that were activated by exposure to supernatural trauma. Meaning what exactly? Maya asked. Meaning your sister might be able to partially shift, Sarah explained. Enhanced strength, speed and senses when needed. It's rare, but not unheard of in humans with distant supernatural ancestry. Maya stared at Elena, who shrugged with characteristic practicality. Explains why I've been craving red meat and getting restless during full moons, Elena said. Also, why I've been able to sense supernatural activity from 3 blocks away. This family gets more interesting every day, Maya murmured. The celebration continued late into the evening, with pack members sharing stories and making plans for Elena and Marcus's ceremony. Maya found herself curled against Constantine's side on one of the large sofas, watching Elena laugh at something one of the younger pack members had said. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Constantine asked quietly. "Just thinking about how much everything has changed," Maya replied. A year ago, Eleanor was a graduate student living alone in Brooklyn, and I was an invisible detective who'd given up on ever finding where I belonged. Now she's engaged to your second-in-command, I'm directing a federal task force, and we're both part of a supernatural pack family. Regrets? There was no insecurity in Constantine's tone, just gentle curiosity. None, Maya said without hesitation. Not a single one. This life, this family, this purpose. It's everything I never knew I wanted. Constantine's arm tightened around her. I love you, Luna. I love you too, Alpha. Maya tilted her head to smile at him. Speaking of which, I've made a decision about the international court consultation. And? I want to do it. I want to help develop global protocols, work with supernatural communities around the world, make this kind of collaborative justice the standard instead of the exception. Maya's voice grew stronger as she spoke. But I want to do it as part of a team, our team. I want the Eastern Pact to be the foundation for an international supernatural law enforcement network. Constantine's smile was radiant. You want to change the world. I want to make it safer for people like those 17 women we saved today, and if that happens to change the world in the process. Maya shrugged. Even better. The pack will support this completely, Constantine assured her. Sarah's already been developing training protocols for other territories. Marcus has contacts in European packs who've been asking for guidance, and Elena's abilities could be invaluable for international intelligence coordination. Maya looked around the room again, taking in the sight of her pack family celebrating Elena's engagement and planning for the future. This was what belonging looked like. Not just romantic love, though her bond with Constantine was the foundation of everything, but chosen family and shared purpose, and the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. There's one more thing, she said to Constantine. What's that? After Eleanor and Marcus's ceremony, after we get the international protocols established, after things settle into whatever our new normal becomes, Maya took a deep breath. I want to start thinking about expanding our family, the traditional way. Constantine went very still against her. Maya, I know it's complicated with our careers and responsibilities. I know there are security considerations and political implications. But Constantine, I want children with you. I want to raise little wolves who grow up knowing they're loved and protected and part of something bigger than themselves. When Constantine didn't respond immediately, Maya felt a flicker of uncertainty. Unless you don't want. I want everything with you, Constantine said roughly, his voice thick with emotion. Children, decades of partnership, growing old together while we watch our pack family expand and thrive. Maya, I've wanted that since the moment I knew you were my mate. Then we'll make it happen, Maya said simply. When we're ready, when the timing is right, we'll make it happen. Constantine's kiss was soft and full of promise, and Maya felt that familiar golden warmth spread through her chest. Not the electric shock of new attraction, but the steady, comfortable heat of deep love and shared dreams. As the evening wound down and pack members gradually departed, Maya found herself standing at the windows looking out over the city lights. New York stretched out below them, full of people who had no idea that supernatural creatures lived and worked and loved among them. Some of those people were safer tonight because of the work Maya's team had done. More would be safer tomorrow because of the work they would continue to do. "Happy?" Constantine asked, joining her at the window. "Completely," Maya replied. "You know what the best part is?" "What's that?" "This feels like a beginning, not an ending. Like everything we've accomplished so far is just the foundation for what comes next." Maya leaned into Constantine's embrace, feeling the solid strength of him surrounding her. "I used to think happiness was about solving one case, saving one person, making one small difference. But this is about building something that lasts, something that protects people we'll never meet and solves problems we haven't even discovered yet." "Our legacy," Constantine agreed. "Our legacy," Maya confirmed, "and I can't wait to see what we build together." Outside the windows, the city hummed with life and possibility. Inside the penthouse, Maya Rodriguez-Volkov, Lunar of the Eastern Pack and Director of Supernatural Crimes, stood in the arms of her mate and planned for a future that would be everything she'd never dared to dream. The golden thread in her chest sang with perfect contentment, and Maya knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever victories and setbacks waited for them, she would face it all with the fierce joy of a woman who had found her place in the world. Where are you listening from? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to support more tales like this, please subscribe. It's free and it helps more people discover these stories of love, courage and finding where you truly belong.